Welcome to Virtual VSC. My name is Kristen Mills. I am the Visual Arts Program Manager here at Vermont Studio Center. If you've been here sometime in the last 2 years, you know me, you've heard my voice way too much. But virtually, I would like to say thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm super excited because we have artist TJ Dedeaux-Norris. TJ is going to be talking to us tonight about a number of things, but specifically about their show that just came down, just finished at the Fig Museum in Iowa, but other things too. So before we start, I would just like to say, if you have not been to one of our Zoom talks, Vermont Studio Center is an artist and writer residency in Northern Vermont. Vermont Studio Center recognizes that it operates on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among Indigenous peoples for thousands of years and is the home of the Abenaki people. We honor, recognize, and respect these people as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which we gather. Without further ado, I will introduce TJ. TJ Dedeaux-Norris, frequently known as Tameka Jenean Norris, uses painting, video, photography, music, performance, installation, project-based art, context art, confession, the internet, and institutional critique to explore the internal drives and external influences that shape identity. I just got chills. All that just gave me chills. TJ, I don't know if you want to say something or if you want me to direct people to the film right now.
I would love to not say anything and direct everyone, please, to the film right now.
So I'm going to let that go. And TJ, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a very strange experience watching people watch that video. And I'm so sorry to call you out, Karen, but your smile is so beautiful while you're watching it. It's just so nice to see that there is a threshold for all different types of ways the piece can be interpreted. So I'm super grateful to watch you smiling as you watched it. So this show, TJ Dedeaux-Norris Presents the Estate of Tameka Jenean Norris, was sort of birthed out of a lot of things. This show was planned prior to COVID, and it turned into this estate project. Like, I think in the last couple of years, I've been thinking about, giving care and caregiving, like being power of attorney of my mother currently, and thinking about, the sort of balance of taking care and caretaking and trying to prepare my own personal will and testament and thinking about what would happen to my things in the event of a untimely death, and how do artists plan for their estate. So these were some of the sort of things, practical things that I was thinking about with the work. And then also like having a name abbreviation. So conceptually thinking a lot about what it means to show up in a space, or who we are allowed to be, or what parts of ourselves we're allowed to bring into a room or a space when we enter, or what parts of us we might need to kind of like push down for survival or to navigate the institution or a certain type of environment, whatever. So TJ became sort of this conceptual idea of the abbreviated version of the self, that can sort of suspend ideas around gender and maybe like race, socioeconomic status. A part of it was a conceptual problem to create for myself in the studio. What does it mean to be a Black politicized artist that went to Yale with a particular name and gender and expectations of what it means? What is the market value or the glass ceiling of a market value potentially for a woman artist or a Black artist or a Black woman artist? And wanting to try to like think about, what does it mean to try to suspend my own belief in the studio? Like, how do I transcend all of these boxes that I maybe have been asked to check by the art world and the world in general. So really trying to create more selves and personas in order to, just try to sort of transcend what's possible in the studio, to transcend what's possible in my own believability of what it means to be an artist, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be a queer person, et cetera. And so the other part, I guess, in thinking a lot about like getting access to all of this artwork as a result of having to negotiate with galleries that I've worked with and trying to, you know, being really lucky coming out of grad school and being able to show my work, but then sort of losing access to it and all of the infrastructure and bureaucracy involved with like having these works in the world. The best and worst problem you can have is to be an exhibiting artist and not have proper infrastructure, right? Because then you might not know where the work is or where it's traveled or who it's sold to or, you know, all of that stuff. So it almost feels like sort of a minor miracle to have this much artwork that has been salvaged, meaning like living in environments that weren't air temperature controlled and, you know, schlepping all of these things around for many, many, many years. And then figuring out that sort of the gallery seemed to be the safest place. The gallery storage seemed to be the safest place for the artwork to be. And that's sort of a catch-22, right? On one hand, that's a really lucky opportunity to have. But on the other hand, as an artist, as a young careered artist, how important it is to have your stuff sort of around you so you can sort of keep the history and the present, the past, and the future kind of going all at the same time. And so it was really important. So today I was talking with the gallery that represents me, Rena Branston, a gallery, and we were talking about how to categorize, you know, these works and who are all the entities and the artists. You know, TJ has their own practice and Tameka's estate is its own work. So there's that part, the sort of bureaucratic, administrative, technical parts of using the gallery, the museum gallery in this case, as sort of a warehouse in a way to open up all the boxes that hadn't been opened in years to kind of see the work again and represent the estate. And so this estate, I believe, is a living, breathing estate because then it sort of has taken on some of my mother's personal belongings as a power of attorney of her, and then the recent passing of my grandmother, that now there are new objects that will probably enter and exit the estate and via objects to sort of cherish and keep and objects that will end up torn up and sort of integrated into the work, which is a part of my archiving practice, right? Like sometimes the archiving is linear and kind of makes sense. And sometimes the archival process is my own personal code that nobody would ever be able to figure out. But I know where moments are indexed, like where my grandmother's sweater is in a painting or where, you know, an old tablecloth is, etc. Yeah, I mean, so the eulogy felt really important to make a document that was able to speak to this macro and micro moment, like you know, this last year, I think all of us have been processing grief in different types of ways, whether it's for a person or people or places or things that you don't have access to. I did want to somehow represent that. And I think the biggest gift of my practice is that it's been given to me. It's like this vessel by which for me to house all of my stuff, like my emotional stuff, spiritual stuff, like all the things. And I thought metaphorically that I would be grieving a former self or a part of myself that I wanted to lay to rest or that needed to be laid to rest because Tameka has endured so much in this world. But then having to house that for real in my grandmother's passing, which my grandmother was like my mother and she, you know, was my like my grandparents are my best friends. So this idea that I had decided years ago that if anything ever happened to my grandparent, like if, as though there were an option for something not to happen to them, that if anything ever happened to them, that I wouldn't be okay. I couldn't be okay. I wouldn't want to be okay. And so this is the first time in my life that I've ever really grieved, like for real. And it's some next level, like grief is some next level stuff. And it's been a really, actually really powerful gift that has offered me an opportunity to make that film to think a lot about what I want from this life, what I want to take with me into my future, which is this next moment, these next hours, next year, the next days, etc. And then the sort of it culminating with this sort of like rebirthing, right? Like the film kind of coming full circle in a way. Yeah, that, I mean, when I think back on that moment, I look so also, so there's another film that it simultaneously was debuted with this eulogy, which is a visual long play, which is an album made by Mika Jean, which is another persona of mine. And so there are these like intense juxtapositions of like what feels like a confident, attractive, moisturized, glistening, glowing body that's agile to one that's in this eulogy that's like brittle and hunched over and like dehydrated and all the things. And I think a lot about in the work that I make, in the personas that I take on, this sort of like method acting thing, where often I do have to take on extra steps to sort of embody the things. And in this case, with grief, it was pretty easy to not have to try too hard. You know, like I was exhausted, I had not been sleeping, I had not been eating, but knew that that emotional performative gesture of grief needed to exit my body and be witnessed by a camera so that then I can sort of be the multiple selves as a muse for myself. The last thing I'll say is that with all of this, there's also a lot of real therapy involved, like doing like somatic therapy and dealing with trauma. So, you know, this practice is also about like not housing it all in the work, but also trying to find other modes to collaborate with. So it's like working out and eating certain foods, while also doing therapy and going to a chiropractor, like all the ways to sort of like keep the body moving and transforming, so that I don't house this trauma inside of my body, and trusting that the practice can do a lot, but also trusting that there are professionals out there that I can collaborate with that can also help me access new points of this work. So I'd love to open it up to whatever, if anybody wants to talk or put a question in the chat or however you want to do it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you spoke a bit about sort of method acting to get into like the mindset to make the film. Do you do a similar or a different process for your other mediums of art? What's the process like when you get into a piece?
Yep. So I have been quoted as saying that I feel more like a performer in a studio making a painting than I do as a performer making a performance. And I think because of the weight of the heavy history of painting, like knowing that there's all this stuff to contend with and that you're often not in that room alone. Like maybe your body is there singularly, but there's a whole history. There's all this other stuff that's going on. And I feel like, yes. So even if it's a simple gesture of like, I wear a jumpsuit, like I have a couple of different jumpsuits. And I know the people at Vermont Studio Summer Center, when I was there, I was wearing this hardcore camo jumpsuit, but it was super cold and it was super warm because it had all the insulation in it. So there's typically some sort of, actually, I don't normally say this, but I guess I want to say it now. I sort of liken it to Trent Dole Hancock, where he has his, what's that character? Torpedo Boy, I think is the character's name. And so like he sort of, you know, will transform in his studio or do this thing. So for me, quite often when I'm making objects and working with materials, I often need to put on a jumpsuit of some sort, and I have various types of jumpsuits, but it's sort of a marker, or like a Mr. Rogers or something, you know, like once he goes into his space and he puts on the one cardigan and the other shoes, he's sort of like kind of transitioned. So I'm a very visually cued, incentivized person. So, you know, taking off the jumper and putting it on helps me kind of realize what kind of role I'm trying to step into. If that is helpful in any way in answering that question. Okay. A heart says maybe I got it.
So thanks for sharing all that you had about like your personal experience and your recent personal loss that went into the exhibit. And I was just thinking, like, looking at the work, I really want to see so much more up close because it is very like tactile. And you also described about how it's like particular family things. But I'm wondering, yeah, and I'm just sort of thinking about the objects that you put in this, in the exhibition, and just going through the experience of losing someone, that sort of like transition from the concept to the realness, like the thinking about what it might be, like you described, losing your, you know, if anything ever happened to my grandparents. And then, of course, when any of us who've lost someone, you go through the transition, it's just like, you just learn that it's nothing like what you could imagine or pretend, right? But so that sort of parallel between the objects and their realness. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but that's what struck me.
Well, I don't know that this addresses that at all, but some of the things that I've been thinking about is like the timing of this show and how there are, again, the gift of the practice that like, these aren't things that I can plan for, but it's like the universe aligning things in a way where I'm gifted these things from this practice. And I'm actually really appreciative that it wasn't a show that a lot of people could access. I feel like it's one of the most raw and vulnerable and private things that I've ever done, that I think I would have felt uncomfortable, you know? So in some ways, I feel like it was a gift that then I'm mediating the show through images for you all, how I want the show to be seen. There are very few people that are actually getting into this space and seeing the works. And I think I'm okay with that for this initial go round. I really hope that this show can travel in some capacity. And as I start to think more deeply about how the estate and the archives grow and shift and change, I mean, there were so many thoughts, like, I mean, yeah, with COVID, there were so many things that changed. Like, I really like, you know, some of the artworks were soft sculptures that people were able to touch or sit on previously, right? So the functionality of some of the work had to change just because of the nature of all of this, or like a work that I would normally drape and have where an audience can really be in a more intimate proximity to it. We're like, no, we're gonna hang it, you know, 20 feet, whatever, from the ceiling. So there is this weird push and pull between the very private, personal, tactile, intimate, and the mediated, this experience. But that's why I felt like, in a weird way, making this memorial. And I think also, like, nobody could have ever had me imagine in a million years that the way that I would lose my grandmother would be during a pandemic, and in a way that I did not have access to like be like, it's just not something that I could have imagined. And like how cruel it is, this idea that people are doing these, you know, Zoom memorials, like that's it, like the finality of culminating is through this mediated Zoom experience. And however, my family did not do that for my grandmother. And I don't think it's something that I would have been able to do, but I needed to figure out some sort of a ritual for myself to formally grieve her. And then it was interesting, my uncle, her son, who's also my godfather and also a deacon, was like, and I'm smiling because it's just like, grief is just so crazy. But he was like, don't worry, like the whole memorial thing, like it's not for the dead, it's for everybody that's left behind. Like, you know, like just so hey, whatever you got to do, basically, it seemed like what he was saying. So like whatever kind of production you got to put on for yourself to kind of do it. And I'm like, what better person than me than to, you know, to throw a whole production, like throw myself in the whole casket, trying to sort of reconcile my grandmother's passing, and just, and also just thinking about simply about mental health, about wanting to make like real choices moving forward about, the trauma that we have endured, specifically over these last 4 years and over the last year, and trying to make really active choices about like, I want to live. I want to be healed, and I don't want to feel the dis-ease of racism every day of my life. And we all experience it. It just means that we are on various ends of how it hits us different.
Right.
And while I want to be angry because there are things to be angry about, I also like want to be at peace. And I think trying to strike a balance of what it means to acknowledge the injustice and the things that are going on around me and around us, and figuring out how much of this narrative that I want to own, that are like statistics about women, statistics about Black women, statistics about queer folks, like these things are real, and how do we transcend some of this? How and the only way that I could really think of trying to exercise and exorcise that for myself was to embody this eulogy and say, and have Christopher McMillan, who was the gentleman that did the eulogy, who is in religious studies and a good friend of mine, and does have the gift of I think of doing a sermon and preaching. He wrote that from like a real place. And that was a really hard ask too, to ask somebody to write, your eulogy. But yeah, it was a process that I had to take, and it feels like coming out or like declaring sobriety or something. Like it feels like one of these moments where I'm like coming out and saying like, this is my promise to myself to move forward and try to heal some of these hurts. And not just through the work, like I said, but through collaborating with therapists and healers, and, examining the things that I put in my body, as it's, it as a holistic practice. And then that on like a practical level will, like having a will and testament, like putting some basic things in order, I think also relieve a lot of stress about the what ifs and all of that. So, that was a very long-winded way of maybe asking a question. I don't remember what the question was. So.
Oh no, that was great. Thanks for being so open and sharing all this. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. I just love, oh, sorry, go ahead. Nope.
Nope, say what you love.
Nope, I was gonna be like, I just love that Kathy is the first name that I saw, I think, when I got into Vermont Studio Center. I feel like, maybe, is that true? Or some sort of correspondence? I can't remember exactly.
I probably sent you the email.
Yeah, anyway, yeah, so it's just, to see your
With
name.
Mara.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was just going to say that somebody chatted to me directly. They said that they made the connection to the New Orleans funeral traditions and found out the song didn't ramble. Your performance had me make those connections. It's more of a statement than a question.
So two things. One, I should credit Mahalia Jackson and Tamela Mann for the songs that I don't put any credits in hardly anything that I do, because of the nature of me realizing that a lot of my films are looped. Anyway, it's a technical thing and trying to figure out where to place that content. But anyway, Mahalia Jackson, Tamela Mann. Yes, the original concept for the homegoing for Tameka was supposed to be a sort of a second line type of homegoing. But then here in Iowa, it was hard. Like there were some leads, and I was like, these are some whitewashed leads. Like this is not this. I'm like, this isn't it. This is not gonna work. Like really awesome, like, but they were more like, what would you call that? Lord have mercy, grass.
Uh-huh.
Bluegrass.
Yeah.
It was more like
Bluegrass.
like it was close, but I was like, no, this is not it. But the intention was to have a more upbeat eulogy, but as things started shifting with the world, I felt it important. Yeah, I just kind of held off, and then the opportunity provided itself, meaning, I shot that within a couple of days of my grandmother's passing and knew that that energy was housed for this, and this would probably be how the eulogy would look. But yeah, New Orleans and the second line tradition and sort of having the home going is really important. And that's why the LP, the visual album, feels like a nice segue out of the eulogy into the LP. It's not here in this context, but it's like you get to kind of see, you get to go out of a eulogy into a more celebratory environment.
Right. I have a question, or it's also kind of a statement, but I see this work, or at least this show, is more about survival. From the way that you're talking, I know you're dealing with passing, but your survival. And I know that the museum put it as a question, like what part of yourself, maybe it's your question, but they posed it as what part of yourself do you need to hide or bury in order to survive? And I think that is like exactly everything you're talking about, like coming out or sobriety or anything like that. You might not have an answer yet because the show just ended, but do you feel like there's a different part of you that's surviving? Do you feel like you were able to bury apart one of your personas, that persona specifically? Do you feel like, I don't know, maybe you don't know yet, but
no, I think it's so good. Yes. Like, I think that TJ was birthed out of having to get power of attorney over my mom and advocate for my mom. And what TJ Dedeaux-Norris looks like on paper at first glance is very different than what Tameka Norris looks like on paper at first glance. And it was about suspending the sort of readability of who I was in order to seem more important, basically. So that sort of like abbreviated version of the self. So TJ is just Tameka Jenean, right? And then adding Dedeaux, my mom's maiden name, to sort of tell the real history of like American history, like the French Creole influence and the whole thing. And yeah, I feel like there are parts, like being able to lay a part to rest is not necessarily like sad. It's like,
right.
When you think about like pronouns, like TJ as they, them.
I was going to ask you that because I know that Chris was saying she, but TJ goes by they. Yeah.
So Tameka is she, but TJ is they, them, as in gender nonconforming, but also as in the plural, as in the multiple selves, right? Like TJ houses is sort of the like administrative front person for all the parts. And then this goes back to thinking about therapy and the parts and all of that stuff. So it's been fun to sort of like flesh a lot of this out in thinking about this idea of survival, and sort of like in therapy, having these moments of talking with my therapist and trying to figure out who needs something reconciled at any given time. And we all do this, like, we come up against a problem and it's like, well, the little child version of ourselves wants to see it reconciled this way. The adult version of ourselves can, and it's like, well, who needs the reconciliation? Or who's driving the car? Like, who's gonna, whatever. So kind of like having fun thinking through some of this stuff. It's exciting to have the title as artist to investigate all of this. And it's really great to be in collaboration with, therapists and healers and other types of body and healing work to sort of I think that part is so important, because I feel like I spent so much of my early practice pushing my body and my sort of psyche to a limit without having anybody to like catch me at the end, like after a thing. And it just feels it feels more responsible, I think, at this stage in my life and career to like have check-in moments and to kind of be able to talk through a lot of this stuff through multiple voices, the academic voice, the sort of emotionally intelligent voice, and all of it.
Cool. That totally makes sense. Nice.
Oh, I hope it does.
No,
I'm like,
it did.
that totally makes sense.
No, I know I sound sarcastic a lot of times.
Mills.
I really mean it. Like that really, you nailed it. Yeah.
Mills. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, my dear. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I was a little bit late getting in, but I'm so happy that I did get in when I did. My question for you, my dear, first of all, I'm bummed that I, didn't get to see this show, but it makes sense that it's like a little bit more comfortable to put that out there for the first round with a little distance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what my question is I'm always totally and completely, and impressed isn't the word. I think it's just in awe of your willingness to share sort of your internal process, and it's first of all, I think it frees up so much for so many people, regardless of what your internal processing might be. It's just sort of like looking at this intelligent woman who's just opening her coat and sharing it all in the way that she sees fit. And every time I look at your work or sit with your work, I'm always struck by that. And it always leads me into thinking about your process, meaning in the sense of, it's sort of like your interpersonal process is there's so many different sort of identities that you tend to and that you acknowledge and you give room to and a voice to. And then I can't help but think about what happens for you as that entity and as that individual with all those sort of kaleidoscopic pieces, who then, opens that kaleidoscope to the public. And I don't mean just public, like people who would want to see your work or go to galleries. I mean, also like the reality of what happens that you don't realize is going to happen to you personally when you teach. It's kind of like, I'm just so curious for you, how you negotiate sort of like, are those identities fluid, or does it feel like, there's a bit of a combustibility sometimes when you're sort of like the meta nature of saying, here I am, this is who I am. I don't know who all of those entities of myself are, but I'm going to use the vehicle of my work to essentially discover what that means and share it with you. And while I'm learning, growing, processing as a human who's making work of that human, how do you, what happens for you when you suddenly realize, oh, I've really just shown myself? Like, am I a commodity now? Is this mine? Like, how does that work for you internally? Like, do you shut down after you put work out? Or, I'm just so curious.
Yeah, so all of that is a part of it. And in short, I was having a conversation like a couple weeks ago. I did a talk. I did something. Oh, it was finishing some of the programming for the show at Figgy. And It was so weird because there was such a dynamic conversation. And then all of a sudden the Zoom just ended and everybody just hung up. There was no cocktails. There was no after party. There was no after the thing. There was no actual clapping. And like this weird thing of like totally opening the coat and then everything just like poop, gone. And I was manic. I was up like the whole night and I was like cleaning up my studio. Like it was just like, where do I put all of this energy? But I think TJ was birthed out of becoming a professor. And what I think is so interesting is thinking about my work as an institutional critique in grad school, that was so much the medium of the work, but realizing the institutional critique just continues as a professor, right? It gets more complicated because I'm going to get gaslit the shit out of a job if I keep this shit up. But anyways, but like realizing that TJ, like I had students that would come to class and see that I was a person of color and like, I'm not saying it was because of that, but I had students come to me later and kind of break it down. Like they felt like if they were enrolled in my class, that there might be some extra level of responsibility. They see what my work looks like maybe they couldn't sit in a room and, I've had students who've never had a person of color in any sort of authoritative role in their life ever coming out of, the cornfields of Iowa, and it's clumsy and it's powerful and it's difficult. And I feel like they would just say Tameka the wrong way. And I'd be like, oh, come again? What you just say? I don't like the way you said my name. So like, you don't even have permission. I don't even want, like, pardon me, but I don't even want white folks saying my name. If I hear it said wrong, I'm like, what
Nope. Yeah.
is going on? So, and it's complicated, right? Like, I don't want to live a life like that. Like, that is no way to walk around in the world as a professor. So it's like,
But it's a natural inclination. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean,
So, and it's only because, my name has been weaponized against me in many situations and many environments, right? So to go by TJ allows, if a student is going to enroll in my class, they don't know what they're getting. It's all of a sudden sounds like it's this big, long name, It's like, I don't know, it sounds smart. It's got a hard to spell French name to it. So, I had to build TJ in order to sort of, but don't get me wrong. It's very complicated. It's very complicated. And it came out of like getting mortgages. Like, okay, now I'm like out here getting mortgages. Like, what does this look like on paper?
Yeah.
So I thought, there was maybe a couple of personas, or, like Mika Jean, who is this femme rapper who, acts out in certain ways and says things that a professor shouldn't. And that's why Mika Jean has that space to do that. But realizing that, like, and I'm like, I don't know, will there be a need for more personas to grow out of this whole ecosystem to be a self?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. So we'll see. Did you practice transforming emotions for the coffin scene? I did not practice because the emotions were alive and housed inside of me and very, very real. And I think that's also the gift of my practice, or whatever, if it's a gift, that my emotions are never too far. They're always right there to be referenced. So, yeah.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, write that down. Yeah, that's like a nice party trick I can pull out at any time. Like, you need somebody to burst into tears? I got you. Anytime.
Are there any other burning questions? Come on.
This was cute though. I was nervous. I am nervous. I like that it's a small intimate group of us.
It's so intimate.
Yeah. May I ask, how do you feel like now that the show's been out and like, you've had a breath, like how are you feeling about it?
I'm so glad it's over, and I'm trying to think. There's nobody here that I can get in too much trouble with, but like, so tomorrow all the work is being delivered to the new studios that we got at University of Iowa,
Oh, good. Yay. That's great.
But like, they're trying to act a type of way about like what's the storage, what's the studio? Like, oh, we're not asking those questions. Like, literally, we're storages are studios and studios are storages, and
right.
But anyways, so as long as I've got a corner to, do like this, it's a studio all day long. All day long. No, I'm, yeah, it's been a lot. The editing process is just, and Kristen, you would know, I just want to call you Mills. Mills would know better. Do you edit all your work?
I do.
That's insane. So
yeah.
So that I cannot do. So I think the hardest part is that, working with editors and wanting to get what you want, but not wanting to edit it yourself. So sort of back and forth of working with awesome editors who were students who did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Actually, but just like, I'm like, but there's a comma missing on a word. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to re-export the whole file again. But yeah, so those things have been difficult. Just trying to, for me to cut the cord of being needy, of needing any more little last minute changes to anything. So yeah, and I'm not teaching this semester, so God bless them. I'm on a little baby.
Oh, good for you.
Little baby sabbatical. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Anyhow.
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Do it.
So I'm not sure how many, I know some of the work that you did in grad school, just from what I've seen, what you've presented in the past. But how many personas do you have, like very specific? I mean, I know the person who just passed, that persona is very specific, but do you have some that are kind of like they just kind of pop up and you're like, oh yeah, there's that one, I forgot about her. And then do they all have different pronouns? Do you realize, do you recognize that sometimes there are they or a she or a me, I, that's me?
Yeah. So some of this has been like it's weird. Like I've come into contact, like if someone met me 20 years ago, you probably only called me Shorty and literally didn't know my actual real name. So when I was like operating as like a rapper only, not in academia, I was like a rapper called Shorty. And that's like, some people still only call me Shorty. And how weird is that 20 years have gone by and we've got social media, but that sort of like strangeness of like how people sort of hold you in this place where they, met you, right? Or like, so yeah, there are some other personas that have never been fully fleshed out. Like they sort of evolved into something else. Like Shorty became my name is not Shorty. And that's all one word. We could go all day. There's a lot. There's a lot there. And I sort of like it in thinking about like aliases and anonymity, or trying to sort of like in a trickster sort of kind of a way, just trying to stay off the radar a little bit, so that's sort of exciting. Or like people not knowing that Mika Jean is a rapper, but who is also TJ Dedeaux-Norris, who's a professor at the University of Iowa. The fact that that is a slow read is really helpful for me.
Got it.
That's a fun identity construction process you got going. I love it.
Right?
I'm taking notes.
There are therapists getting co-pays out here that are just, outstanding. And Mills, if you want to, I'll send you a $20 copay if you want to talk it through with me a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Cool.
That's great.
I love it. All right. Well, y'all. Tony, you look so good over there. You look like a photo, but it's you. You don't have to come off mute if you don't want to, but I just want to wave to you and say hi. You look
Hi.
great. Hi.
Hi, all. I'm down here in Alabama at in Northport, Alabama, headed for the Coleman Center to deinstall. So,
yay!
Yeah, I just really enjoy your work. These talks. It's fun to kind of be in Vermont by default.
Yeah.
I went to years ago at Goddard. I don't know. It's just. I was curious, TJ, where do you, I don't know, I feel like a silly question. Where do you see yourself going next with your process? I mean, you've done it all: film, sculpture, photography.
Yeah, honestly, I think this next year, I'm really focused on, for lack of a better term, like this sort of embodied research. So it's really going to be a lot of my own mental health sort of stuff that I'm working on, my own spiritual health, and nesting and doing a lot of things in my home and to my home, and just really trying to like wind things in really tight right now, so that in a year I can sort of re-extend my energy. And it's hard. You've been at it a long time. So I think right now I just need to kind of like reel it in a little bit. And I'll be around and I'll be on social media, and I'll, I'm going to bake some bread and just kind of try to keep it simple. Yeah. And look at the work. Sometimes we produce so fast. I know, Kristen, you're ready to go. I know. We're going to go.
No.
And like, well, you know this too. You make videos so fast. Like it's hard to be objective. Like if you like, the work just keeps coming, and I need to sit down and sit with the work. Like right now, when I watch the eulogy, I still just like burst into tears. Like I need to get past all of that and really, wrestle with the work itself. So that's gonna be, that's gonna take a while. So, but I've got the next couple of weeks to practice because I've got some talks coming up. So we'll see how we do.
I also wanted to say thank you for, we're celebrating Black History Month, as and TJ was our first celebratory guest. So I'm very excited for that. So thanks for doing that. I know it was a tough month for you and you have a whole lot going on right now.
Yeah.
So thanks for making it happen. I really do appreciate that. So
anything for Vermont Studio Center. I mean it. It was great. It was like, seriously, I hate to like not be gracious about the other things, but like it's nice to be somewhere where you're nowhere and somewhere. Like to have a grocery store accessible just kind of makes a difference.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
So I'm just, I'm so ungrateful. No, it's Vermont was awesome. It was just it was a magical, special time, and I'm super, super, super appreciative.
Well, we're gonna have you back as a visiting artist in person, but who knows when?
Yeah,
the grocery store will still be here. So, probably.
Sounds good. Yeah, I got to check out the sewing machine repair guy. He was
right. Yep.
mind blowing. Anyway, so many wild, amazing Vermont experiences.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna make me a whiskey and Coke.
Yes.
I was
now,
drinking Coke to stay awake. Now I'm gonna have me a cocktail.
I'll be in touch again, and I'll shoot you an email tomorrow anyway. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you everyone
so
for
much.
sharing time with me. Thank you so much. It means
Congratulations, Tameka.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
You.
Mm.
Thank you. It was great.
You guys have a great night.